The crowd didn't just clap, they exploded. And before I tell you why, make sure you stay until the very end of this story, because what happened on that stage changed a young boy's life forever. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss moments that remind us why dreams matter. The lights inside the massive theater of America's Got Talent dimmed slowly, and a nervous whisper traveled through the audience. Backstage stood a small 12-year-old Filipino boy named Mateo Reyes. He wasn't famous. He didn't come from money. His shoes were slightly worn at the edges, carefully polished by his mother the night before. His black hair was combed neatly to the side, just like the old photos of his idol. He wore a simple white blazer over a black shirt, nothing flashy, but his hands trembled as he held the microphone. Mateo grew up in a tiny neighborhood in Manila, where power outages were common and dreams often felt too big for the narrow streets. His father had once been a lounge singer on cruise ships, but when illness took his voice, music disappeared from their home. The only thing that remained was an old CD collection of Elvis Presley. Every night, Mateo would sit beside a scratched stereo, listening to the king of rock and roll, trying to copy the deep tone, the vibrato, the soul. The neighbors sometimes laughed. "You're just a kid," they'd say. "You can't sing like that." But Mateo didn't want to sing like everyone else. He wanted to bring something timeless back to life. When his audition number was called, his mother squeezed his hand. "Anik," she whispered, "sing from your heart." That was all he needed. He stepped onto the grand stage of America's Got Talent, blinking under the bright lights. The judges sat in their towering chairs, including the famously hard-to-impress Simon Cowell, who leaned forward with a curious expression. Simon had seen thousands of auditions. He'd heard every genre, every sob story, every overconfident dreamer. A young boy singing Elvis? It sounded risky. "What are you going to sing for us today?" one judge asked. Mateo swallowed. "I'll be singing Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley." A few audience members exchanged doubtful looks. A kid choosing one of the most legendary songs in music history? The instrumental track began softly. The first notes echoed through the silent auditorium. Then Mateo sang. "Wise men say, only fools rush in." The room froze. It wasn't just good. It wasn't just impressive for a child. It was hauntingly powerful. His voice carried a richness no one expected, smooth and controlled, with a warmth that felt decades old. The tone wasn't imitation, it was homage. He wasn't copying Elvis. He was honoring him. The camera cut to Simon Cowell. His eyebrows lifted. His arms slowly uncrossed. The skepticism melted into genuine shock. As Mateo reached the chorus, his voice swelled with emotion. He closed his eyes, remembering his father singing faintly in the kitchen years ago before his voice faded away. Every lyric carried a memory. Every note carried sacrifice. In the audience, people began standing up one by one. By the final line, "Take my hand, take my whole life too," the entire theater was on its feet. For 2 seconds after the music stopped, there was silence. Then chaos. Cheers erupted like thunder. People screamed. Some cried. It wasn't just a performance, it was a moment. Simon leaned toward his microphone. "Mateo," he said slowly, "I did not expect that. That was absolutely incredible." Mateo's hands shook again, but this time not from fear. From relief. Simon continued, "You didn't try to be a copy. You made that song your own. And that's what makes a true artist." Backstage, Mateo's mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Another judge asked him why he chose Elvis. Mateo explained about his father, about the old CDs, about the nights practicing when the lights went out and he sang in the dark. The crowd grew quiet again, listening to the small boy with the giant dream. Simon paused for a moment, looking at the other judges. "You know," he said, "we see a lot of contestants chasing trends. But you? You brought back something real. Something classic. And you reminded everyone why music matters." 3 yes came quickly. Then Simon hesitated. The audience held its breath. "I'm not done," he said. Mateo's heart pounded so loudly he thought the microphone might pick it up. Simon reached forward and pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded from above, raining down like a dream turning into reality. Mateo dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. His mother ran onto the stage, wrapping him in the tightest hug she had ever given. The crowd truly lost it. Strangers hugged each other. Phones recorded history. Somewhere in the world, old Elvis fans smiled through tears, watching a new generation keep the flame alive. But the most powerful moment happened later that night backstage. Mateo's father, who had stayed in the Philippines watching from a small borrowed television, called him. His voice was still weak, still fragile. But he managed to say, "Anak, you gave me my voice back." Mateo cried harder than he had on stage. Because winning wasn't the golden buzzer. Winning wasn't the applause. Winning was healing something broken in his family. In the weeks that followed, clips of the audition went viral. Millions watched. Comments flooded in from around the world. People said they felt hope again. They said the performance reminded them of their childhood. They said they called their parents after hearing that song. Mateo returned home not just as a contestant, but as proof that dreams don't depend on where you start. He began using his growing platform to support music programs in underfunded schools. He recorded songs, not just Elvis classics, but original tracks inspired by his roots. He stayed humble. He stayed grateful. And every time he stepped onto a stage, no matter how big, he remembered that tiny living room in Manila where it all began. So if you're watching this right now with a dream that feels too big for your circumstances, remember Mateo. Remember that talent mixed with heart can break through any barrier. Remember that sometimes, honoring the past can build your future. And if this story moved you even a little, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because the world needs more stories about courage, about family, and about kids who dare to sing songs people say they shouldn't. The crowd lost it that night. But what they really witnessed was a boy finding his purpose. And that is something no applause can ever fully measure. The judges were ready to press the buzzer. The audience was already whispering. And no one, not even Simon Cowell, was prepared for what was about to happen next. Before we dive into this unforgettable moment, make sure you stay with me until the very end of this story, because what happened after the performance is even more emotional than the audition itself. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss powerful moments that restore your faith in dreams. It was a packed night at America's Got Talent. The stage lights were blazing, the crowd buzzing with excitement. Dozens of contestants had already performed, some impressive, some forgettable. The judges looked slightly tired, especially Simon. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, expression unreadable. Then the host announced the next act. Please welcome 11-year-old Joshua Villanueva from the Philippines. A small boy walked onto the stage. He looked almost swallowed by the massive arena. Joshua wore a simple cream-colored suit jacket, black pants slightly too long for his legs, and neatly combed jet black hair. His hands clutched the microphone tightly. His eyes scanned the crowd, thousands of strangers staring at him. "Hi, sweetheart," one judge smiled. "What are you going to sing for us today?" Joshua took a deep breath. "I'll be singing Suspicious Minds by Elvis Presley." A few eyebrows rose. The audience reacted with mixed laughter and curiosity. Elvis? From a child? That song demands power, swagger, soul. It's risky. Very risky. Simon leaned forward. "That's a big song," he said carefully. Joshua nodded. "Yes, sir." Back home in Cebu, Joshua's family was watching from a tiny living room. His mother worked double shifts as a nurse abroad. His father drove a tricycle taxi. Music was never a luxury in their home, it was survival. Joshua grew up listening to old vinyl records that belonged to his grandfather, especially songs by Elvis Presley. While other kids were into pop hits, Joshua practiced deep vibratos and powerful runs late into the night. He had been bullied at school for his music taste. "You sing old people songs," classmates would tease. But he didn't stop. The music began. The first instrumental notes echoed through the theater. The crowd shifted in their seats. Some were smiling, waiting for a cute but average performance. Then Joshua opened his mouth. "We're caught in a trap. I can't walk out." The reaction was instant. Gasps. It wasn't just good, it was explosive. His voice had grit. Control. Confidence far beyond his age. He moved with natural rhythm, not exaggerated, not forced. Every note hit perfectly. He didn't mimic Elvis, he embodied the emotion. Simon's eyes widened. One judge turned to another with a shocked expression. As Joshua reached the chorus, his voice soared through the auditorium like a wave crashing against walls. The audience began clapping along. Energy surged through the room. It felt less like a competition audition and more like a sold-out concert. Backstage, Joshua's younger sister clasped her hands tightly, whispering prayers. Halfway through the song, Joshua did something no one expected. He stepped away from the mic stand and delivered a powerful vocal run that wasn't in the original version. It was bold. Risky. But it landed perfectly. The crowd jumped to their feet. Simon, who rarely shows visible emotion, was now smiling, actually smiling. When the final note rang out, Joshua held it longer than anyone thought possible. The silence that followed lasted only a split second before the entire arena erupted into deafening cheers. The crowd lost it. People screamed. Some stood on chairs. Even security guards were clapping. Joshua stood frozen, almost confused by the explosion of sound around him. Simon finally spoke. "I honestly didn't expect that," he said, shaking his head slightly. "You took a classic, legendary song and performed it like it was written for you. That was unbelievable." Joshua's eyes began to fill with tears. Another judge added, "You have something rare. Not just talent, but presence." Then Simon asked a question no one saw coming. "Why Elvis?" Joshua swallowed hard. "My grandfather passed away last year," he said softly. "He used to sing Elvis songs to me before I slept. I wanted to sing this for him." The arena went silent. The tough atmosphere of competition transformed into something deeply personal. Simon paused for a long moment. "You know," he said quietly, "music connects generations. And tonight, you proved that great songs never die." The judges gave their votes. Yes. 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 Then Simon leaned forward again. "I'm going to say something very important," he began. "You are not just a kid with a good voice. You are an artist." The audience roared again. Confetti cannons didn't fire that night. There was no golden buzzer moment. But something even more powerful happened. After the show aired, Joshua's audition clip went viral across social media. Millions of views poured in. Fans from around the world commented about how his performance brought back memories of their parents and grandparents. Music teachers shared the clip with students. Radio stations in the Philippines invited him to perform live. But the most emotional moment came weeks later. Joshua received a message from a children's hospital in Manila. A young patient had watched his audition and said it gave him hope during chemotherapy. Joshua visited the hospital quietly, without cameras. He sang softly at a bedside, just like his grandfather once did for him. That's when he understood something bigger than fame. He realized that talent isn't just for applause, it's for impact. Back on the AGT stage during the live shows, Joshua performed again. This time, he wasn't just representing himself. He was carrying his family, his culture, his memories, and every child who feels different for loving something old-fashioned. He didn't win the entire competition. But he won something greater. Confidence. Purpose. and a global family who believed in him. So if you're watching this and you feel like your dream doesn't fit the trend, chase it anyway. If people laugh at your passion, practice harder. If the world says you're too young, too different, too unrealistic, remember the night an 11-year-old Filipino boy made an entire arena lose their minds singing Elvis. Because sometimes the boldest choices create the loudest applause. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable journeys of courage and talent. And remember, legends may inspire us, but new legends are born when someone dares to sing. The first note hadn't even finished echoing, and the entire arena was already holding its breath. No one expected the quiet 10-year-old Filipino boy in a slightly oversized vintage suit to shake the stage of America's Got Talent. Not the audience. Not the judges. And definitely not Simon Cowell, who looked ready to press his buzzer within the first 10 seconds. But what happened next? It became one of those moments people replay over and over again. Before we continue, make sure you stay until the end of this story, because the most emotional part didn't even happen on stage. And if you love powerful, inspiring journeys like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that remind you what courage really looks like. His name was Daniel Cruz. 10 years old. Born in Davao City, Philippines. Small for his age, with soft brown eyes and neatly combed black hair, Daniel didn't look like someone about to take on a rock and roll legend. He wore a cream retro-style blazer, a black button-up shirt, and simple dress shoes polished so carefully you could almost see his reflection. When he walked on stage, the crowd reacted with polite applause. Some smiled. Others whispered. Simon leaned forward slightly. "What are you going to sing for us today?" Daniel cleared his throat. "I'm going to sing If I Can Dream by Elvis Presley." The audience murmured. "That song isn't easy. It demands power, emotion, maturity. It's not just about hitting notes, it's about carrying weight in every word." And here stood a 10-year-old boy about to attempt it. Back home, Daniel's mother was watching through tears. She worked as a housekeeper overseas for years to support him. Daniel had grown up mostly with his grandmother, who introduced him to the music of Elvis Presley through old cassette tapes. While other kids watched cartoons, Daniel replayed classic concerts, studying every movement, every breath. But it wasn't about imitation. Daniel's grandmother used to tell him, "Don't sing like Elvis. Sing like Daniel, with Elvis in your heart." The instrumental began softly. The lights dimmed to a single spotlight. Daniel closed his eyes. There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. The first line came out smooth and steady. The crowd shifted, surprised. Simon's eyebrows lifted slightly. This wasn't shaky. This wasn't nervous. It was controlled. As Daniel continued, his voice grew stronger. It wasn't the deep baritone of Elvis, it was youthful but powerful, filled with raw sincerity. The vulnerability in his tone made the lyrics feel new again. Halfway through the song, something changed. Daniel opened his eyes, and you could see tears forming. He wasn't acting. He was remembering. Remembering nights he felt alone. Remembering video calls with his mother across oceans. Remembering promises that one day they'd live together again. And while I can think, while I can talk, while I can stand, while I can walk. The audience was no longer whispering. They were silent. Simon, who rarely shows emotion, removed his glasses slowly and leaned closer to the desk. When Daniel reached the final chorus, his small frame seemed to hold something far bigger than himself. He delivered the high notes not with force, but with passion. The kind that doesn't come from vocal training alone, but from longing. The final note rang out. Silence. A full second. Then the explosion. The crowd lost it. People jumped to their feet. Cheers thundered through the theater. Some audience members wiped tears from their faces. The camera caught one judge with her hand over her heart. Daniel stood frozen, overwhelmed by the roar surrounding him. Simon spoke first. Daniel, he said slowly, that was not just a performance. That was emotional. The audience clapped again. You didn't try to be a copy, Simon continued. You made that song personal. And that's very difficult to do with a legend like Elvis. Daniel's lips trembled slightly as he whispered, "Thank you, sir." Another judge asked, "Who are you dedicating this performance to?" Daniel looked toward the camera. "To my mom," he said. "So she knows I'm trying my best." In the Philippines, his mother broke down in tears. Simon paused, glancing at the other judges. "I've seen thousands of auditions," he said. "But every once in a while, someone walks on this stage and reminds us why we started this show." The votes came quickly. Yes. 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 Then Simon surprised everyone. He stood up. The crowd roared again. "I think," Simon said, "that you represent hope." And though he didn't press the golden buzzer that night, he did something equally powerful. He walked around the judges' table and shook Daniel's hand personally. For Simon Cowell, that meant something. But the story didn't end there. Weeks later, after the audition aired, Daniel's performance spread across social media. Millions watched. Comments poured in from around the world. Overseas Filipino workers shared the clip, saying it reminded them of their own children back home. But the most powerful moment came quietly. A video surfaced of Daniel reuniting with his mother at the airport after years apart. She ran toward him, crying. He held her tightly. No stage lights. No judges. Just family. He whispered, "I sang for you." She replied, "And I heard you." Daniel didn't win the entire competition. But he gained something bigger. He brought his family back together. He inspired kids who feel small. He proved that age doesn't define depth. And he showed that music, real music, transcends generations. So if you're watching this right now, sitting on a dream that feels impossible, remember Daniel. Remember that courage isn't loud at first. Sometimes it walks quietly onto a giant stage and sings from the heart. If this story touched you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring journeys that prove dreams have no age limit. Because sometimes, the smallest voices carry the biggest impact. And sometimes, the crowd loses it not because of volume, but because of truth. The audience started laughing. Not in a cruel way, but in that doubtful, this is going to be cute kind of way. A skinny 13-year-old Filipino boy walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent wearing a bright white jumpsuit with rhinestones, flared pants, and slicked back black hair. It was bold. Almost too bold. He looked like he had stepped out of the 1970s. Even Simon Cowell smirked. "What's your name?" Simon asked. "Rafael Mendoza, sir." "And what are you doing for us today, Rafael?" Rafael smiled nervously. "I'm going to perform Burning Love by Elvis Presley." The crowd reacted instantly, some cheers, some chuckles. A few people whispered, "Elvis? Really?" Simon leaned back in his chair. "That's a very brave song choice." Rafael nodded. "Yes, sir." What no one in that theater knew was that Rafael almost didn't show up that day. Back home in Quezon City, Rafael had grown up in a crowded apartment above his mother's small tailoring shop. His father had left when he was 7. Money was tight. School was tough. Rafael was shy, often picked on for being different. While other boys talked about basketball or trending pop songs, Rafael spent hours watching old concert clips of Elvis Presley on a cracked secondhand tablet. He didn't just love Elvis's music. He loved the confidence. The power. The fearlessness. Elvis represented something Rafael didn't feel he had. Confidence. At school talent shows, classmates laughed when he wore vintage outfits. "You're stuck in the past," they told him. But Rafael believed that great music never expires. The instrumental intro of Burning Love blasted through the AGT speakers. The crowd clapped casually. Then Raphael grabbed the microphone, tilted it slightly, and belted out the first line. Lord Almighty! I feel my temperature rising. The laughter stopped. Instantly. His voice wasn't thin or shaky. It was fiery. Controlled. Shockingly powerful. He moved with natural rhythm, not exaggerated imitation, but authentic energy. He wasn't pretending to be Elvis. He was channeling the spirit of performance. Simon's smirk faded. Raphael hit the chorus with explosive energy, his voice soaring above the music. The audience began clapping in rhythm. Some people stood up. By the second verse, something incredible happened. Raphael stopped trying to impress anyone. He started having fun. He spun once, confidently. He smiled wide. His nervousness melted away. The boy who had been teased for years was now commanding a stage in front of thousands. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the desk. The final chorus approached. Raphael took a deep breath and delivered a high note that echoed through the entire theater. It wasn't just loud, it was clean. Controlled. Electrifying. The crowd jumped to their feet before the song even ended. When the final beat dropped, the arena erupted. The crowd lost it. Screaming. Whistling. Applause so loud it drowned out the music. Raphael stood frozen, chest rising and falling quickly, eyes wide in disbelief. Simon took his time before speaking. Well, he said slowly, I honestly thought this was going to be a bit of a joke. The audience laughed lightly. But that, Simon continued, was seriously impressive. Cheers erupted again. You have charisma, Simon added. And that's something you can't teach. Raphael's eyes filled with tears. One judge asked, why Elvis? Raphael hesitated. Because when I feel small, his music makes me feel big. The room fell silent. That's beautiful, another judge whispered. Simon nodded thoughtfully. You know, Raphael, people will always have opinions. But what matters is whether you believe in yourself. And today, you showed that you do. The votes came in. Yes. 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 For yes. Raphael covered his mouth, overwhelmed. But the story didn't end there. When the episode aired weeks later, Raphael's audition clip spread like wildfire across social media. Viewers. The judges were seconds away from hitting the red buzzer. You could see it in their faces. Another kid. Another big dream. Another risky song choice. The audience shifted in their seats, some already expecting a sweet but forgettable performance. But by the end of those 3 minutes, the entire theater would be on its feet, screaming so loud the cameras could barely capture it. And trust me, what happened after the performance is the part no one talks about enough. So stay with me until the end of this story. And if moments like this inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us why dreams deserve a chance. The stage lights of America's Got Talent glowed against a quiet arena as 12-year-old Miguel Santos stepped forward. He was from a small fishing town in Batangas, Philippines. Short, thin, with careful posture like he was trying to take up less space than he actually deserved. He wore a simple black blazer, white shirt, and slightly scuffed dress shoes that had clearly been polished over and over again. When asked what he would sing, Miguel's voice barely rose above the microphone. I'll be singing Love Me Tender by Elvis Presley. There it was. That murmur again. The kind that says, this might not end well. Simon leaned forward slowly. Simon Cowell had heard thousands of covers in his career. Many good. Many painful. A young boy choosing one of the most delicate songs by Elvis Presley? It was dangerous territory. Why this song? Simon asked. Miguel swallowed. It's the first song my father taught me before he left to work overseas. The audience quieted. Miguel's father had been a fisherman until storms destroyed most of their boats. With no income left, he left for the Middle East to support the family. For years, Miguel saw him only through video calls that froze mid-sentence because of weak internet signals. Music became their connection. Every Sunday, no matter the time difference, they sang together over the phone. The instrumental began softly. Miguel closed his eyes. "Love me tender, love me sweet." The first line came out almost like a whisper. Gentle. Pure. You could feel the tension in the room. People leaned forward. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was honest. By the second line, something shifted. Miguel's voice carried a trembling warmth, not from fear, but from memory. He wasn't performing for judges. He was singing to someone far away. Simon's expression changed. He uncrossed his arms. Miguel didn't move much. No big gestures. No dramatic runs. Just stillness and sincerity. And somehow, that simplicity made it even more powerful. Halfway through the song, the camera panned to the audience. A woman wiped tears from her eyes. A man placed his hand over his heart. Miguel reached the final verse. "For my darling, I love you, and I always will." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Not perfectly polished. Not studio flawless. But heartbreakingly real. Silence filled the theater when the music stopped. A deep, heavy silence. Then applause. Slow at first. Then louder. Then the entire arena stood up. The crowd lost it, not because of vocal acrobatics, but because they felt something. Miguel blinked rapidly, trying not to cry. Simon took a deep breath before speaking. "That," he said quietly, "was one of the most sincere performances we've had in a very long time." The audience clapped again. "You didn't oversing it. You didn't try to turn it into something it's not," Simon continued. "You respected the song. And you made us believe every word." Miguel nodded, holding back tears. Another judge asked, "Is your father watching tonight?" Miguel looked toward the camera. "Yes. He's watching from Saudi Arabia." Simon paused. "Well," he said slowly, "I think he's going to be very proud." The votes came in. Yes. 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 For yes. Miguel covered his face as tears finally spilled over. The audience chanted his name. But the real moment, the one that made the entire production team emotional, happened backstage. As Miguel walked off stage, producers handed him a phone. On the screen was his father, crying openly. "I heard you," his father said. "Every word." Miguel couldn't speak. He just nodded. Then his father said something that would stay with him forever. "You don't have to sing for me anymore. Sing for yourself now." That single sentence changed everything. When the episode aired, Miguel's audition touched millions. Overseas Filipino workers shared the clip, tagging their children. Families separated by borders found comfort in those 3 minutes of music. Miguel advanced to the next rounds. His confidence grew. He started smiling more on stage. He experimented with bigger songs, stronger notes. But he never forgot that first audition. He didn't win the entire competition. But months later, when his father finally returned home for good, the entire town gathered at the small port to welcome him. Miguel ran into his arms. No cameras. No stage lights. Just family. That was the real victory. Because sometimes, success isn't about trophies. It's about connection. It's about courage. It's about standing on the biggest stage of your life and choosing to be vulnerable instead of perfect. So if you're watching this right now and you miss someone, if you're chasing a dream that feels impossible, if you think your quiet voice won't be heard, remember Miguel. Sometimes the softest song can create the loudest impact. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real, powerful journeys that remind us why talent shows aren't just about winning, they're about healing. Because that night, the crowd didn't just applaud a performance. They witnessed love crossing oceans. And that is something no buzzer can ever stop. The audience was ready to scroll on. Another kid. Another audition. Another big dream on the stage of America's Got Talent. But 3 minutes later, people were standing on their chairs, screaming, crying, and replaying the moment on their phones before the show had even ended. And the person who looked the most shocked of all? Simon Cowell. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened after the cameras stopped rolling is the part that truly broke hearts in the best way. And if you believe dreams deserve a spotlight, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that prove impossible is just a word. His name was Salazar. 14 years old. From a crowded neighborhood in Manila where jeepneys roared past narrow streets and karaoke machines echoed late into the night. Andre wasn't the loudest kid. He wasn't the most confident. In fact, growing up, he barely spoke in class. But he sang. He sang while washing dishes. He sang while walking to school. He sang quietly into a cheap plastic microphone his aunt had given him years ago. And every time he sang Elvis Presley. Not because it was trendy. Not because it would go viral. But because when Andre was 9 years old, his older brother Miguel used to sing Elvis songs to calm him down during typhoons that shook their home. When Miguel passed away unexpectedly from illness, the house fell silent. Elvis songs were the only sound that made it feel alive again. So when Andre walked onto the AGT stage wearing a simple black leather jacket, dark jeans, and boots slightly too big for him, he carried more than nerves. He carried memory. "What are you singing tonight?" a judge asked. Andre's voice was soft but steady. "I'll be singing Bridge Over Troubled Water, the Elvis version." Simon raised an eyebrow. "That's a very emotional song." Andre nodded. "Yes, sir." The lights dimmed. The piano began. For a split second, Andre closed his eyes, and you could see him breathing through fear. Then he sang. "When you're weary, feeling small." The first line wasn't explosive. It wasn't flashy. It was fragile. And that's what made everyone lean forward. His voice wasn't trying to overpower the song. It was carrying it gently, like something precious. There was a slight rasp in his tone, raw and unpolished, but filled with heart. Simon's posture changed. By the second verse, the fragility turned into strength. Andre's voice grew fuller, richer, more confident. The emotion in his delivery felt almost too real, like he wasn't performing for votes but speaking to someone unseen. Backstage, producers were whispering. The audience was silent, completely silent. As the chorus approached, Andre's hands trembled slightly around the microphone. But when he hit the higher notes, something inside him unlocked. "I will lay me down." The note soared across the theater, steady and clear. Gasps filled the room. Simon's eyes widened. One judge covered her mouth. The final chorus built slowly, and instead of holding back, Andre let everything out. The grief. The love. The longing. Every word sounded like a message to his brother. When the last note echoed into silence, there was a heartbeat of stillness. Then the arena exploded. The crowd lost it. People jumped to their feet, screaming. Some were wiping tears away openly. The energy wasn't just excitement, it was release. Andre stood there, stunned, tears sliding down his face. Simon leaned toward the microphone. "That," he said carefully, "was one of the most honest performances I've seen in years." The applause grew louder. "You didn't just sing a song," Simon continued. "You told a story. And that's what artists do." Andre nodded, unable to speak. Another judge asked gently, "Who were you singing for?" Andre looked down for a moment before answering. "For my brother." The theater went quiet again. Simon exhaled slowly. Well, wherever he is, I think he'd be incredibly proud. The votes came quickly. Yes. 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 For yes. But Simon wasn't finished. You know, he added, you have something that can't be taught. And if you believe in yourself,